Our next step in this process is to eliminate any unit productions. Unit productions meaning I've got some variable on the left-hand side, and that goes to exactly one other variable on the right-hand side. You can see, looking at our current grammar, we have a number of those. S, for example, can derive A, and that's a unit production. It can also derive B, that's a unit production. A can derive S, is a unit production. A can derive E, is a unit production. B can derive E, that's a unit production. So we've got quite a few unit productions, and we need to get rid of those as well. The first thing we need to do, well, I should say that there's a fairly easy way to do this that sometimes works, and that is to basically take all the unit productions and replace them by the right-hand side of all the productions of that particular symbol. So, for example, I could take these E's and immediately replace them by X's, and that would effectively remove those unit productions without changing the language. That breaks down, however, in the case where there is a cycle. For example, here, S can go to A, and then A can go back to S. In the lecture notes, I did the example I worked of the Chomsky normal form reduction. I did not deal with a cycle, and so I wanted to do that to show how that's actually handled. To handle that, what we need to do is we need to look for all pairs such that one variable can be used to immediately derive, or excuse me, not immediately, to non-immediately, to eventually derive a single other variable. And the rules for doing this are very similar to what we just did for finding our nullable variables. We start with some easy base cases, and then we see if those base cases reveal anything more to us. So in this case, we can just look at our grammar and we can see that S can be used to eventually derive A. S can eventually be used to derive B. A can eventually be used to derive S. A can eventually be used to derive E. B can eventually be used to derive E. And then we look for pairs that are in the closure of all of these relationships. So what do I mean by that? Well, A, for example, can derive S. S can go directly to B. That means that in two steps, A can go to B. S can go to A and A can go to E. So in two steps, S can go to E. Let's see. How many total did I have? 1, 2, 3. There are a few that in your text it would be listed for completeness sake, like S can derive S and A can derive A. Those won't really affect what we're doing. So I think that's the list we need. Unless there's others that I haven't picked up. S can go to, well, there's not that many variables, so I think that's pretty much the possibility. Now, having done that, we look to each of these pairs, and if I have a pair GH, and I have a production somewhere that says H can derive some string of symbols. What I do is I add a production, G can derive that same string of symbols. And then once I've done that addition, I use that to replace any direct unit derivations that we've currently got. So this basically says if G can, in one or more steps, derive H, and H can derive some string of symbols, go ahead and add a production that says G can derive that string of symbols. because clearly it can. And this bypasses the need to have that unit production in there in the first place. So let's grab a copy of our grammar here, and let's try this. First, let's do it for S and A. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for places where we have a production for A that goes to some non-unit production, like this one. A goes to S in parentheses. And we're going to add a production that says then that S can go to that same string. So A can go to S in parentheses. Fine. That means that S can go to S in parentheses, because S can go to A in one step. A can derive parentheses with nothing in between. That means S can derive parentheses with nothing in between. A can derive S, but that's a unit production, and we don't do this copy with unit productions. A can derive E, again that's a unit production, so we don't really need to do that one. All right, that takes care of SA. So now let's pick that up, and well, I'll just keep working in here. Let's do SB. So that means that now we're going to look at things that B can derive and add them to S. And so B can derive S inside square brackets. So S can derive S inside square brackets. B can derive square brackets with nothing inside. So S can derive square brackets with nothing inside. And that the last production for B is a unit production, so we don't bother with that one. Okay, so that takes care of SB. What about SE? Well, we've got one production that says E can go to X, and so that means that S can go to X. That takes care of the productions for S. Now or the pairs that have S leading. Now let's look at the pairs that start with an A. A can go to S. That means that any production up here that S can go to, any non-unit production that S can go to, A could go to instead. So S can go to SA. So A can go to SA. S can go to SB. Excuse me. So A can go to SB. S can also go to A and B, but those are unit productions. S can go to S in parentheses, so can A, but A already has that production. A already has a production for this. However, S, we now know, can go to S inside square brackets, and that means that A can also go to S inside square brackets. S can go to square brackets with nothing inside, so A can go to square brackets with nothing inside. S can go to X, so A can go to X. All right, that takes care of, well, that was AS we were just working on. So now let's look at AB. B can go to S inside square brackets, therefore A can go to that, but we've already got it there. B can go to square brackets all by itself, therefore A can, but we've already got that up there. This is a unit production, so we don't need to do that. All right, let's look at AE. E can go to X, therefore A can go to X, but we've already got that in A as well. All right, so that takes care of the last of the A pairs. Finally, we look at BE, and that tells us that E can go to X, therefore B can go to X. Now we've processed all the pairs, and that means we can actually safely remove all those unit productions because we've effectively routed a shortcut around them. with the new productions that we've just added. So that's the process for removing unit productions. Did I get them all up? No, I've still got A goes to S. There we go. That's the process for removing unit productions in cases where we've actually got a cycle among the unit productions in the grammar.